Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I want to talk about pet peeves, those little things that drive you insane about the hobby. Now every now and then I get a question in the comments that makes me stop and think, and I go, that would make a fun topic to talk about. And some time ago, Jack Chisnell asked me one of these deceptively simple questions. What are your pet hates in the hobby, he asked. Now some of that question slipped through the cracks. It got buried under other ideas, as sometimes happens, but luckily it resurfaced, and today I thought it was time to finally give it the attention it deserves. Now it's not an easy question to answer, because if you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know I can be relentlessly positive about the hobby. I really do think tabletop wargaming is the best pastime in the world. It's creative, it's social, it's endlessly fascinating, and it keeps me coming back time and again. So finding things I genuinely dislike is not simple, but Jack asked, so I'll give it a try. Now before anyone starts sharpening their bayonets or sending the cavalry charging down my driveway, let me make one thing very clear. This is meant to be a friendly discussion. I'm not here to insult anyone or tell anyone they're doing it wrong. What I want to do is hold up a mirror to some of the little annoyances in the hobby, those tiny things that niggle at us, the things that make us twitch slightly when we see them across the table. And we'll probably all laugh at ourselves along the way, because let's face it, most of the time we're guilty of committing these sins ourselves. I know I certainly have been in the past. So let's start with the one that always makes me twitch, and in fact I did a video on this a few months ago: unpainted miniatures on the tabletop. I can just about accept a figure or a unit that's been primed but not yet painted. At least that shows intent, a journey that's begun. But bare metal or grey plastic, that makes my eye twitch uncontrollably, and I think part of it comes from some bad memories from my early days of wargaming. I turn up at a game with a carefully painted army, every belt buckle and musket strap picked out, weeks of work poured into my figures, and I'd be so proud. And then I'd get my backside absolutely handed to me by an opponent with an army of absolutely bare metal. And not just a few figures here and there, the entire army, a shiny silver regiments marching across the battlefield like the world's least stealthy invasion force. I'd say there's something deeply unfair about losing to an unpainted army. You want to shout, at least paint the things before you annihilate me. It's like being beaten at chess by someone using bottle caps instead of proper pieces. Now of course, life gets in the way and not everyone has time to paint, and standards of painting will vary enormously, and that's fine. But the early trauma left its mark, and every time I see a block of bare plastic or metal on the table, a little part of me wants to reach for the nearest brush and start painting mid-game. My opponent's artillery is bombarding my centre, and I'm sat there mentally dry brushing his grenadiers. Now another pet hate of mine, and one that I've mentioned many times on this channel, comes from the world of Wargame shows, and it's one I've mentioned, as I say, many times: demo games without any identifying signage. Now this isn't as common as it used to be. Most clubs and groups are great these days about providing signs, handouts and information. But even at the big shows like Salute and Partisan, you still occasionally come across a sprawling, gorgeous table with stunning figures and terrain, and absolutely no clue what it is. No sign saying what period we're looking at, no indication of which battle is being played, no handout with details of the rules, not even the name of the club or group who put it on. And for me, it's like walking into a museum and finding a beautiful display case with no label. You're left peering at it, scratching your head, trying to work out whether those are Spanish tercios or just unusually well-dressed pikemen. And it's frustrating, because part of the hobby, part of the joy of shows like this is learning something new. It's picking up an idea or discovering a period you might never have tried otherwise. But you can't do that if you have to play detective just to work out what you're looking at. Now, I know that making signs isn't glamorous. Nobody gets out of bed in the morning thinking, today's the day I print a really good laminated label. But it does make a difference. A simple sheet of A4 saying the name of the battle, what rules you're using, what the group is running it. It all talks. It's all it takes. Otherwise, no matter how beautiful your table is, it risks being remembered forever as that nice game with some chaps in funny hats. So now let's talk about bases. Back in the day, when I first started painting a long time ago, my bases were just painted green. A solid coat of Humbrol grass green, and that was job done. I thought I was doing well, but it wasn't long before I realised how much difference even a little bit of basing effort can make. I started raiding my mum's kitchen cupboard for oregano, sprinkling it over bases as makeshift flock. And let me tell you, there's nothing quite like the smell of pizza wafting across your Wargames table, because half the terrain came straight out of the spice rack. Friends would come over and say, "Lovely battlefield, but why am I suddenly hungry?" Now, I don't expect every base to be a miniature work of art. Not every soldier needs to be striding across the dire army of the Ardennes forest. But even minimal basing, a bit of sand, some static grass, maybe a tuft or two, just frames the paint job and makes the miniature look finished. A plain green or brown base always feels unfinished to me. It's like a picture without a frame, or a cup of tea without milk. Technically fine, but missing that last flourish. And once you've seen the oregano trick, it's hard to go back. You will never look at your spice rack the same again. Paprika for desert warfare, oregano for Europe, basil for the Mediterranean. Your dinner might be bland, but your bases will look and smell amazing. Now here's one that might ruffle a few feathers, I don't know. Touchy-feely players. And I'm not talking about inappropriate contact across the table. I mean players who just can't stop fiddling with their figures. They move a unit forward an inch and then back half an inch, then sideways and then forwards again, and by the time they're done, nobody can remember where the figures started or how far they were meant to move. Somewhere in the process they've gained an extra inch of movement. It's not usually deliberate, it's not cheating necessarily, it's more like nervous fidgeting, but it drives me a little mad. I'm a firm believer in the one-touch rule. Decide where the figures are going, move them there and then stop. None of this shuffle, shuffle, shuffle nonsense, because what happens otherwise? You end up with arguments. Didn't they start further back? Weren't they facing the other way? And suddenly the game grinds to a halt while everyone tries to reconstruct the exact location of a unit of light infantry from memory. And you know what? That conversation ends, nobody can agree. So the unit stays right where the player just happened to leave them, which, wouldn't you know it, is an inch closer than before. If I had £1 for every extra inch gained that way, I could afford a whole new army. Speaking of irritating habits, let's talk about power throwers. You know the ones, the players who confuse rolling dice with competing in the Olympic shot put. Dice don't just land on the table, they launch. They bounce off hills, scatter across the battlefield, knocking over regiments and end up wedged under the sofa. You spend half the game crawling around on the floor hunting for missing dice like some bizarre medieval treasure hunt. And the maddening thing is, it doesn't make any difference. No matter how hard you throw them, the dice will still hate you and roll badly. If anything, the harder the throw, the worse the result. It's like the dice resent being treated that way. "Oh, you held me with enough force to take out a window. Enjoy your double one then." Now don't get me wrong, I like a bit of energy in dice rolling, nothing wrong with a satisfying clatter, but when your dice are flying with enough force to take out passing aircraft, it might be time to ease off a little bit. Personally I'm a fan of dice trays, contained, controlled, no risk of collateral damage, but I know some people hate them and insist it changes the roll. Well, I don't know about that, but I do know it prevents your carefully based oregano infantry from being flattened by a stray D6. And then of course we come to the one that always gets the grognard's grumbling, scowl creep. Now I've got no problem building an army from different manufacturers, even if there's a slight size difference between ranges. A millimetre here or there isn't the end of the world. But what I can't stand is mixing those ranges within the same unit. That's when the differences really stand out. You end up with one figure, half a head taller than his comrades, with hands the size of dinner plates, standing next to a chap who looks like he missed breakfast and shrunk. The result is a unit that looks less like a disciplined battalion and more like a lineup in a school photo. Everyone at different stages of growth. And the annoying thing is that once you notice it, you just can't unsee it. Your eye goes straight to the tall guy in the front rank instead of the beautiful paint job of the whole unit. It's distracting and it breaks immersion. I once saw a mixed unit where the standard bearer looked like he could use his flagpole as a walking stick for the shorter lads. It's hard to take the clash of empires seriously when one side looks like they're accidentally recruited an entire battalion of hobbits. So there you have it, my personal shortlist of Wargamers' pet hates: unpainted miniatures, dredging up traumatic memories of losing to bear lead, demo games at shows with no identifying signage, leaving us guessing whether we're watching the 30 Years' War or a particularly fancy wedding, plain bases that cry out for at least a pinch of oregano, touchy-feely players edging their troops forwards with every shuffle, power throwers launching dice like trebuchets, and scale creep, the bane of mixed manufacturer units everywhere, turning serious regiments into family photos. But do any of these things really ruin the hobby? Of course they don't. At the end of the day, they're quirks, little irritations that make wargaming what it is. More often than not, we're guilty of some of those ourselves. If you've recognised yourself in any of this, don't worry, you're in good company. But now I want to hear from you. What are your pet hates in the hobby? What drives you nuts? What makes you roll your eyes? What tiny thing makes you mutter under your breath? And more importantly, can you laugh it off? Or does it ruin your day entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments because, as always, I love to hear them. So please join the conversation in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from the channel, please tap the bell notification. And of course, if you want to consider becoming a member like these wonderful fellows over here, that really helps keep the channel going. So until next week, stay safe, keep going, and of course, keep rolling high.